Welcome back, Besiktas fans. This is episode 11 of the Black Eagles podcast. Today, making his triumphant return, is my co-host, Kaan Bayazit from Belgium. Round of applause. Kaan, you want to say a word?
It's like returning, like a friend I haven't seen in six years, and we're finally meeting again, and I'm having a beer. Talking some football, you know, it feels like it's been a while.
Yeah, no, it's one of those long, short windows this preseason where there's like so little going on and yet so much in our minds.
Yeah. Especially in our minds.
Mostly in our minds, yeah. And amongst our fellow fans, lots of debates. And as always, I'm Sinan Schwarting, live from New York. Of course, it's great to have Kaan back up and running. The season is very nearly underway now. The preseason has just concluded. I will very quickly run through how we performed in the preseason. I left off in the last episode talking about our Slovakian training camp. We then moved on to Austria, where we played Shakhtar in a 0-0 draw. We then played CSK Moskva in a 4-1 loss. We then met up against Reading, and we drew 2-2, although we were up 2-0 until like the last 2 minutes. They scored some, in true dead garbage time with our C team. Anyway, and then the final result, much more recently, was against Krasnodar, also of Russia, which we won 3-1. I won't go too much into the matches themselves because we have a lot to cover today, but I suppose highlights of this were that a couple youngsters stood out. There was Fatih Aksoy, who was fairly solid actually on the back line, and we'll get into that more, but that could be a need for us in the upcoming season. And then also Dorukhan Tokuz, our new transfer, really showed he has a place in this team. Maybe off the bench, likely because we have some value and some talent ahead of him. But those were the sort of good news projects. Now, Kaan, do you want to? I think we probably agree. There's one maybe not such good news candidate.
Well, I think we both kind of expect a little bit more from Kyle Larin in terms of production, but I did think he played a decent game against Krasnodar.
He stepped it up last night.
I personally, I don't put too much weight into these friendlies, but for me, it's kind of like when a regular isn't showing the best performance, I'm like, yeah, you know what, the guy's trying to get ready for the new season, trying to get his condition up to speed and all that kind of stuff. But with a young guy that like Larin and these new guy, the new guy Dorukhan, and of course youngsters like Fatih Aksoy, for them this is a chance to show themselves to the coaching staff. And for Larin, I kind of hoped a little bit more in terms of productivity. He had a lot of chances, missed quite a few. Another positive I think is also Ozan Yakub. 6 friendlies, 3 assists and 3 goals. He had no goals last season in the league, I think. So that's hopeful at least, but friendly matches. So
yeah.
As for Dorukhan, I didn't really manage to see how his defensive work was and how good he did there. But something that stood out to me with him was his forward thinking, despite the fact that he is a defensive midfielder, and just the way that he, his handling speed was good. He passed the ball well, looked good in the combination play and all that stuff. So that's hopeful. Yeah. I kind of agree with you on that. Dorukhan was definitely the standout. Because we didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah, I had no idea whatsoever. And he's coming from a relatively, in the global scene, a small side in the way of Eskişehir. Of course, Turks know the club quite well, but
I have a friend who would probably bash your face in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know who you're talking about too. I have a feeling.
And he lives close by to you, so be careful.
Yeah. Uh-oh. But, I mean, I guess in the global sense, most Turkish clubs aren't particularly well known. And, I'm in the context of the United States where, people don't know most football clubs. They do typically know. They'll be like, oh, there's that Turkish club. What's their name? And they could be talking about Galatasaray, Fenerbahçe, or Beşiktaş. But, that's about it, for the casual. But so, of course, people listening to our podcast are not going to be those casuals, so that's irrelevant. But yeah, no, he wasn't unknown, and I think he stepped up. He looked good. Anyway, but to move on, sort of quickly from there, also in terms of what's going on these days, because there's not a lot of concrete stuff. But of course, most of the stuff we're talking about won't be concrete. It's going to be transfer rumors and all that. There was a World Cup. I don't know if you heard about that, Khan.
Oh, really?
pretty big tournament.
Whereabouts?
I've heard it's a pretty popular thing over there too. And yes, our golden boy that we've overused that this summer, but Domagoj Vida was the first Beşiktaş player to ever feature in a World Cup final, and take this, Galatasaray and Fenerbahçe fans, the first player in the Turkish Super League to ever appear in a World Cup final. So that is a position solely held by a Beşiktaş player currently. Suck on that, fellas.
And of course, I mean, like a guy like Schneider, he played in a World Cup final, but we're talking in currently active in the Super League, of course, because, just clearing that up, in case there's a couple of nitpickers out there, and there's going to be some of those.
Yeah. No, that's not even a question, is it? But yeah, exactly. No, that's a good point. Yeah, there have been guys who have come to Turkey years later, but yeah, this is the first time an active Turkish league player was in the final.
And the impact is going to have as well. We were talking when we started this podcast, I guess a little over a month ago or something, when we were talking about the potential sale of Domagoj Vida. I think we were kind of talking 12 million, 14 or 15 if we were lucky. And this World Cup has really upped that value a lot. I think that if we sell him for less than 20 million at this point, I think we have to be disappointed, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I mean, it's amazing how we've gone from, I think, on this podcast, we said something like, after the knockout stage, we're like, oh my God, we could probably get 10 million from him now. And then now it's 20 at least, I feel this has been a very positive development. And of course, I didn't even say this, but yes, Croatia ended up losing in the final and letting up 4 goals to France, which, I heard some Liverpool fans say, oh, he's going to go up against the Mbappes of the world in the English Premiership, are we sure, blah, blah, blah, but I don't, those are just the naysayers. At the end of the day, he's meeting up with PSG. Okay, we'll talk about that. Should we just jump into that?
Let's go for it.
Well, so we'll go straight into transfer rumors then, and go straight into Outgoing, because that's really where the action is currently, as everyone knows.
Fortunately, has been for pretty much the entire summer so far.
And to the point where if you're on Twitter or any social media, this, and you've probably participated in the general fervor and panic that, has been quite common among Beşiktaş fans in the last week. Although I'm personally not on the panic bandwagon yet. I think we have to keep cool. But anyway.
Oh,
no, we're getting there. Yeah, it's hard not to get there at this point. But anyway, just let's keep that conversation about Domagoj Vida going. So regardless of the naysayers saying, oh, maybe against Mbappe he wasn't so good, whatever, the fact is he's meeting with clubs. Khan, let's get the update from you on that. Who has he been meeting with recently? What are we talking about here?
Well, the concrete rumors in this regard, Domagoj Vida, sorry. According to beIN Sports, there's been an official offer from West Ham United for 22 million euros on the table, and Beşiktaş still want to get more. I think they're trying to push that number for 25 or something along those lines, so they haven't accepted just yet. Of course, the English clubs are under a little bit of pressure. Their transfer window is already closing on the 9th of August, so they don't have that much time left. So that's not a bad move from Orman, but he doesn't have to overplay his hand, of course. I think at some point, you have to, I mean, you can say, okay, look, the price is 25, and okay, fine, accept it then, but not when they offer 25. Oh, you know what? We're gonna want 27 over here.
No, yeah, that can get annoying really quickly. So, I'd imagine for the other party.
Exactly. I think they're, not yet in that territory, but they have to be careful. I mean, at some point, West Ham or the other interested clubs are probably going to say, look, we'll try and get someone else then. And I think we have to be realistic here. This is the time to sell. Domagoj Vida isn't going to keep this value. In January, most of these clubs have already forgotten about the World Cup, and they're looking at the hot prospects, the guys that did well in the Champions League group stages.
Absolutely.
The Cenk Tosun's of the world.
You said, very briefly, you did say at the beginning of the transfer window, and I think you need to be on record here because it was pretty, wise. But you said, You said we have to wait for the World Cup because this is one of those special opportunities where any one player their value could skyrocket based on a few performances. And Domagoj Vida is like a textbook example of exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, I have to be honest though, I did not expect this. I mean, I could be sitting here right now and be like, oh yeah, I knew all along, but believe me, I didn't. But yeah, this is a textbook example of exactly that. And this is where Besiktas have to capitalize now. If they can get 25 million for him, that would be absolutely massive. I think 22 million is absolutely massive already. I mean, you have to keep in mind, before last January, nobody had ever paid more than 16 million euros for a Turkish league player. And of course, now we got 22 plus bonuses for Cenk. And if you get another 22 or 23 or whatever here for Domagoj Vida, that's 220 plus million transfers in the span of 6 months, and both for the same club, mind you. So that's absolutely huge. And there's people that are going. I mean, we have those people in our group, even in our editorial staff, and they're like, oh no, we shouldn't sell Vida. Look, guys, this is the one time, if you're going to ever sell him, sell him now. You're not going to get an opportunity like this ever again with him. I'm not dissing his ability, but this is, it doesn't matter what we do this season. We can win the Europa League. You're not going to get this money anymore. You're not going to get this type of an offer. This is the absolute highest stage in the world, the World Cup. If you perform well in the UEFA Champions League or you perform well at the FIFA World Cup, that's where you increase your value the most.
And as you had, to go back to what you'd said, and it's true, you definitely didn't predict Vida, and particularly a defender, becoming that sort of guy who jumps up in value like that. But, that's the value of having ideas like that, having systems in place, having kind of rules that you abide by, because, even if you can't predict an individual guy exploding to the extent that Domagoj Vida did, financially or whatever, that's, you have to keep yourself open to that possibility, and if you kind of go into a transfer window or into a tournament or whatever with that mindset, these are the rewards you get. And so, you can't turn those rewards down when they do show up, basically, right? Because we just saw a guy's transfer value go up $15 million in 1 month, right? Off of 6 performances or so, right? I mean, 8 maybe?
Yeah.
7.
Seven matches, but he only played in 6 because the third group stage game he didn't play in because they were already qualified. But yeah, that's true. And plus, I mean, it would have been so easy for Besiktas to sell him before the World Cup because there were already interesting offers on the table. You have to keep in mind Besiktas only got him on a free transfer 6 months ago, and there were already 12 million euro offers on the table. So from 0 to 12, that's a pretty, that's a nice profit you can make there. But they did the right thing and waited until after the World Cup, and now they can double that money if they're lucky.
And for all the Besiktas fans in panic about all the outgoing transfers, being able to sell the one guy for 20 is what enables us to not have to sell a bunch of other guys for 5, 6. So for the sake of continuity in the squad, we need that. Perhaps and again, this is what enables us to maybe splash on a transfer that we need for some rather big positions. But anyway,
that's true. Well, there's still some other rumors in regards to Vida, but this is the most concrete one with West Ham. Now, there's also some other stuff. Radio CRC in Italy reported that currently Domagoj Vida's agent is in Paris meeting with the Paris Saint-Germain sporting director, over a potential transfer to PSG. But he would be an alternative to AC Milan's Leandro Bonucci, who's their top target.
Which makes sense. They want to couple him with their new keeper, right? The new old keeper.
But the thing I kind of always, when I hear this kind of news, like his agent is in, insert random town negotiating with random club. The thing I always am worried about, if they mention that the agent is there, if the radio station or the article or whatever, if they do not mention the agent by name, it tends to be made up, because it's not that easy to figure out the players who is this player's agent name. You can figure it out with if you ask the right people, but it requires a certain amount of effort. Now it's very easy to write just his agent was there and people will buy it, but you need to be a little bit more inquisitory towards that, and I'll take that with a huge pinch of salt. Then there's also the Liverpool rumors. Again, something I take with a pinch of salt. There are, of course, Leicester City, Everton have been linked, a bunch of Premier League clubs really. Fulham have been linked as well. Yeah. So there's definitely plenty of interest there for Domagoj Vida, but the most concrete one thus far seems to be West Ham United.
Yeah, no, that, at least from what we've gathered via the media, and of course you always have to take it with a pinch of salt, but it seems like the only actual discussion that's in place, like offer that's been tabled, right? I think that was the West Ham deal, right?
Yeah, as far as we know.
Right, yeah, thus far. And yeah, again, like, as for the agent, like, who knows? He could literally be vacationing in Paris, and some guy just saw him in the airport and was like, "Hey, I saw him." Like, yeah, everything needs to be taken with a pinch of salt at this stage. But fingers crossed. The more money we get from Vida, the more we have to splash. Whatever. We'll save that for the incoming section. But anyway, let's move on then. Is there anything else to say about Vida?
I don't really think so. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but from the top of my head, I can't really think of anything.
Yeah, and like we've covered his fantastic World Cup performance, the likelihood of him going out, the fact that nobody wants to see him leave, as far as what he does on the pitch. But
yeah, I think we all kind of wanted to see him play at least a full season at Besiktas, but this is just one of those things, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity thing.
Exactly.
You can't... I mean, imagine if you sell him for 25 million. That's a new record again in the time span of 6 months, and with us missing out on that UEFA Champions League money, an injection of 25 million is really welcome.
Huge. No, that's a big deal. No, that's... And again, like, how can we tell 10 or 15 players that they should be ready to leave and have their bags packed just in case, and then not sell the guy who we could get 22 or whatever from right in one go? It's just disingenuous to the whole club, So anyway, it's just bad luck. That's where we are financially. We're in a position of where we need to sell, and it's a big opportunity.
And I'll go into that a little bit more in depth later in the podcast, because I had some questions about what's going on with the club, what is the financial situation and all that. But let's just I'll briefly try to explain that at the end of the podcast, perhaps.
Yeah. So then the next one on the docket, I guess let's go straight to the definite, done and dusted, reported.
Yeah.
Like, tear face emoji, right? Everyone's favorite goalkeeper, Fabri, has been sold to Fulham. He's off to England. Con, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, especially we're getting 6 million for him, 6 million euros. It may be a little bit more. It's not officially confirmed yet. Initial report was 7, then it went down to 6, so that's already kind of a disappointment right there. Then it was, you're getting 6, but Fulham are covering the training cost, because as you know, I mean, with every transfer a player makes, there is a certain training cost that needs to be paid to the club that trained the player. Usually that comes out of the transfer fee, but in this case, Fulham are covering that, supposedly, according to Haber 1903.
Just to interject, who is that club? Is that Deportivo La Coruña?
Deportivo La Coruña, yeah. As far that's where he went to. He played for a couple of other clubs in between, but he was originally trained by Deportivo La Coruña. So yeah, it's gonna be 6 million, maybe a little bit more. Anything above 6, let's be happy. But I mean, I guess 6 is kind of on the low end of what you'd consider selling a crucial key player like Fabri for, who is going on 31, who we got on a free transfer. I think 7 or 8 million would have probably been kind of made us feel a little bit better about it. I think.
Yeah.
That 1 million just that does make a difference. But of course, Fabri last year of contract wanted a raise, deserved a raise, but given the club's financial position right now, they didn't really want to give out. They don't want to be giving out raises anymore. They want to press down the wage budget, so they didn't want to give him a raise. So there was kind of that, are we going to risk losing him on a free next summer if he decides not to extend with us? Fabri really happy at Beşiktaş, kind of wanted to stay, but also the opportunity of Premier League football was something that enticed him. But for him, it really wasn't a case of I want to leave. This really was more of a look. This is best for all parties. Beşiktaş get a good chunk of change out of it, and for Fabri, it's a nice opportunity for him to make a kind of bucket list thing, I guess, for his career.
Yeah.
I mean, he's almost 31 years old, and for him to still go to the Premier League, I think that's a great thing for him.
Yeah, it's good for everyone, right? It's good for everyone involved. It's good for Beşiktaş. It's another player we've resuscitated and given the opportunity to go to England, which, for an incoming transfer who's looking to resuscitate their career, for example, like those are the kinds of things you look at, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, this is not the first time that a player comes to Beşiktaş and because for years Turkey, and it still kind of has that stigma, but for years Turkey was this destination of, this is the end of your career. That's where you go to grab some cash at the end of your career. But Beşiktaş, over the past couple of years, have been proving the contrary. I think it's a club where players go and revitalize their careers, or other players, that weren't even on the radar ever at any point, like Fabri, of the major leagues, and they put themselves on the map with his Champions League performances. Cenk Tosun, Fabri now, Marcelo. Of course, Domagoj Vida. That's kind of an asterisk there, but
Mario Gomez, right?
Mario Gomez for sure. Vincent Aboubakar. There's so many examples over the last couple of years of players that have really, where Beşiktaş have proven to be a stepping stone, and that's something that that's a status a Turkish club has never had. Like I said before, it was a very negative stigma about Turkish football, but Beşiktaş are the pioneers right now in changing that image of Turkish football, and that's something to be proud of. But also, of course, you do kind of become a seller club at some point, and that's not always as fun. But I mean, like we said, financially, this is really, I think, good for Beşiktaş. I mean, we got him on a free, selling him for 6 million, but now it's all up to who are they going to replace him with. The replacement needs to be a good player, and if you half-ass it, and you get a poor goalkeeper, that's not something that's going to be forgiven by the fan base, because Beşiktaş have been struggling with goalkeepers for so long. Fabri was the first goalkeeper that truly inspired confidence in the fans,
especially in Europe, right? It was particularly, we had these like hiccups in Europe with keepers.
But across the board, Tolga wasn't enough, Hakan Arakan wasn't good enough, Cenk Günen wasn't good enough, even Rüştü Reçber wasn't really, he came in at
too late.
Yeah, he was past his prime at the point that he came in. I mean, ever since Oscar Cordoba, Beşiktaş have not had a goalkeeper that you could trust, that you felt secure in. And Fabri has had a couple of mistakes here and there, but there was an interesting statistic coming by over the last 2 Super League seasons, he has had the best save percentage in the entire Super League. That is not something to laugh at. I mean,
No way.
no.
I mean, we're talking about this is versus guys like Muslera, who is a world-class keeper.
Yeah, I mean, Antoine Griezmann might disagree, but
yeah, right.
But
although relatively, I was thinking about that. Like Uruguay held France to 2 goals, right? Which is like in perspective of a whole cup, maybe commendable. Anyway, I don't want to freaking commend those jerks or Galatasaray's keeper. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean.
Yeah. So that's a big question now, the big question mark, who are Besiktas going to get? Yeah. And right now there's 2 names that are prominent kind of, and then there's a third name that's kind of being talked about. Yeah. Of course, the eternal rumor, David Ospina, the goalkeeper we've been linked with since
for 5 years,
6 years, 2012. It started in the Feta season.
Well, yeah, and I was gonna say that the only way a €6 million fee sits well with me, stays in my stomach for the evening, is if by we, I suppose I mean the front office, but if they have actually lined something up, if they're not doing this so blindly, if in discussing with the 2 or 3 keepers you're about to mention, they have sort of already established that they're not going to have to pay over X amount, that they're going to be bringing $1 million or so in. I don't know. I'm not going to judge the fee until we see the final result. But that aside, go on about who we're bringing in, because there are some options. Ospina you already mentioned, is an exciting one, but
Ospina is the one that our fans are probably most excited about. Then there's Tekin of Bursaspor, who's being kind of pushed to the forefront as well as a top candidate. And then there's Jose Sa of FC Porto, who personally I'm kind of hoping for. If I have to be honest, I mean, 25 years old, promising goalkeeper, good height, because that was one of the main downfalls for Fabri. Well, downfalls, I mean, he isn't very tall. He's like 183, which is very small for a goalkeeper. But it was never really a problem with Fabri, you have to admit. But I have to, from my own personal point of view, I do kind of feel more comfortable with a goalkeeper that's like 190, 192 in the goal, because you just feel that they have that little bit more reach on a penalty, a little bit more reach on a long shot.
Sure. I was just reading a serious scientific article about something that was called height privilege. And that people who are taller, for the record, I'm 6'2". I'm a pretty tall guy, so I would be the beneficiary of this privilege. But apparently, psychologically, people tend to always give the edge to people who are taller in various scenarios. Of course, this is a real one where there'd be a benefit, right? That extra couple inches would make the difference. Although, as you said, right, like Fabri showed that it's not like the determining factor inherently. But all right, we're talking about a vacuum. We're talking about 3 guys. Based on purely their merits and everything. So I think you're allowed to give him that privilege in this case, for sure.
Yeah. And just to be clear, I mean, we're mentioning these 3 names, but it might very well be a 4th name that ends up being. These are just the ones that are most prominent and most rumored, most prominently rumored. Now, about Tekin, personally, I really hope that's not going to happen, because I've been watching him for a very long time. Yeah. And I know Şenol Güneş is fond of him, but I've seen these types of goalkeepers. I know that a lot of people are impressed by him because he makes a lot of impressive saves, but so did Cenk Günen. So did Hakan Arikan.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a typical Turkish thing. Really good reflexes, but shaky, not very good on high balls, and just having the tendency to make really, really weird decisions and stupid mistakes. And I know Fabri has had his share of a couple of errors, but I have to say, despite his height and despite that goal against Fenerbahce where he totally got pushed by Emenike, by the way.
Yeah, come on.
Despite that, and maybe 1 or 2 like that he missed a high ball. I always felt super confident and super comfortable with him going out for corners, going out for crosses.
Yeah.
He ruled the sky despite his height, and that's something with a Harun Tekin and with any other Turkish goalkeeper. I don't have that feeling, and I never had that feeling. I didn't have it with Rushtu. I can't recall a Turkish goalkeeper where I felt confident when he went up for a cross.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most important things in Europe. That's one of the most important thing in the league even.
Yeah.
You know, when you're leading 1-0 in the final few minutes and they're pumping the ball forward, you need to have a goalkeeper that can bring some confidence to the defense, and that's important.
Inspire his comrades.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I really don't have that with Harun. Really don't. And it's, for me, that would really be a super
Downgrade. Yeah. No, and I mean, I'm going to sort of move things along, so I don't want us to get too stuck on the point, but you're absolutely right. Like, you know, I don't think... let's maybe wrap this up really quickly, because you actually did put out a nice poll on this very subject. And let's let the fans, like, have the last word on this. Who did they vote for?
I don't have it up right now, but last time I checked, there were like 500 votes in, I think, and over 60% voted for Ospina.
Mm-hmm.
I think around 22 or 23% voted Harun Tekin, and around 16 or 17% voted for Jose Sa.
Oh, come on, guys.
Yeah, I just think that's down to,
familiarity. Maybe familiarity.
No, yeah, exactly. Familiarity. They're familiar enough with Harun, and they're not really with Jose Sa. And then, of course, they're kind of like, why are Porto letting this guy go? Stuff like that. I've spoken to some people in Portugal, and I'm not going to tell you that he's seen as a huge, massive talent, because if he was, Porto wouldn't be willing to let him go. But I've also been told, look, that he can really pull out some amazing saves as well, and he needs confidence. What he needs is a coach that's willing to give him trust, that's willing to inspire confidence in him. And one of the most important things as well that I was told is that basically he made one mistake against Liverpool in the Champions League and he was dropped. So
we know those stories. Well, and to wrap it up, that is exactly probably what people would have been saying about Fabri before he came to Besiktas. You know, that he wasn't coming with a lot of buzz. Nobody was like, oh, heartbroken they were losing him. But
on
in
the
end,
contrary. Oh no, actually, Deportivo fans were very heartbroken about that they were. Yeah, I spoke to quite a few of them, and they were very disappointed that he was leaving, because they really, really rated him very highly. Even the people I spoke to, they told me he's one of the best goalkeepers in La Liga, but underrated. And I think he kind of proved that.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Well, all right. So I guess what I mean, though, to fix that point, but it's just that, like, regardless of what we know of a guy, right? Like, they could come and with the right coach, with the right confidence instilled in them, they could make something of themselves. And so, don't judge a guy simply based on, like, he's not a hyper talent that the club can't be because, like, we've just let go of Fabri, right? Like, we've let go of a number of guys that people might not have let go of in a vacuum. So there are conditions, right? You just never know why.
Yeah. And you didn't say something stupid there, because that was the general consensus from people in Turkey, and even people in Spain, because he was very highly rated by their own fans. But you have to keep in mind, Deportivo are a team that were fighting relegation. Mm-hmm. They conceded a lot of goals, and plus, and on top of that, Fabri had his injuries. So in Spain, by other people that didn't watch Deportivo all that closely, they didn't think all that, they didn't look twice at Fabri. Fabri isn't an impressive goalkeeper because he is so small, so that's something you easily look past.
Exactly.
But his performances were there, and Deportivo fans really appreciated him. And from speaking to them, I was very confident that he would make it at Besiktas. And I was one of the few people, along with my friend Volkan, that kind of felt good about that transfer, while everyone, you might not remember this, but everyone was up in arms about that transfer.
Yeah, I vaguely recall, like, not speaking Turkish, I wasn't too privy to it, but I myself was, like, underwhelmed. But my mentality is always to kind of, like, give the scouts the benefit of the doubt. If they bring someone in, there's got to be some logic to it. Like.
Well, when you talk about scouts, this guy wasn't really scouted. He was our goalkeeper coach at the time, Jose Sambada.
Yeah, who I trusted implicitly.
He brought him in, basically. He said, you have to get this guy, and guess where he's working now? He's Fulham's goalkeeper coach.
Yeah, I was gonna take a wild guess and say something crazy, but okay, I'm glad you gave it. Anyway, well, let's move on, because I don't want to belabor that point, but yeah, like, hopefully by our next episode, we'll have news about a goalkeeper, which will allay our fears. And, my whole thing is hashtag anyone but Harun Tekin. That's all I'll say about that. Anyway, the next piece of news that's definitely concrete was the selling. And this is actually like, I should play like a sad, like, wonk, wonk, wonk, like, this is a podcast favorite, and both of us were rather in favor of the young guy. But Matej Mitrovic, our young Croatian central defender, was in fact sold to Club Brugge for 3.5 million euros, which I thought we'd actually denied earlier in the window. But
we did.
I guess he didn't shine in our friendlies. I mean, he did have one sort of stinker of a match. I mean, the whole team stunk that match. And he scored an own goal, but like, come on, that happens, and it's a friendly. But anyway,
Kostic's first 2 goals for Besiktas were own goals.
Well, yeah, exactly. So anyway, but he was sold to Club Brugge for 3.5 million euros. He signed on a 4-year deal, and I just want to go on the records on day one, on the moment of announcing this transfer on this podcast, that I think we will rue the day that we sold this kid. Yep. In a way, like, and this wasn't really felt around the club, but in the way that I remember seeing Gordon Schildenfield playing for the Croatian national team like 5 years after we just like totally discarded him, and thinking like, we had.
I spoke to Ante about that actually, and he told me you weren't the only ones who felt like that. The whole Croatia felt like that.
Yeah, I was like, what? But anyway, like, this is one that I think, given, again, maybe this is that height privilege I was talking about, but given his size, but just generally, like, his mental attributes on the pitch, I don't know. I think we're
like his footballing qualities a lot.
Yeah.
His passing ability, his confidence on the ball. I think we're in a couple of years, our fans will be, hey, what? Why did this guy get sold to the Premier League for that much? Why didn't we give him a chance? Exactly. Well, now they were like, oh my god, this guy is the shits. We need to sell him. Oh my god.
Oh my god, he let in an own goal in a friendly match against like a Slovakian team or something like, or not even. Yeah, no, just ridiculous.
Yeah. I feel I'm entirely with you. I think we're going to regret this. I think he's going to prove Shinal Gunesh wrong. I'm confident in that because I've seen him play for Bruges last season. I've seen what he's capable of. I think he's going to, in a couple of years, he's going to be talked about where like, oh, that was a missed opportunity. Why didn't he ever shine at Besiktas?
Yeah, that's like, all right. So it's on the books. We've announced our feelings about this
on the record.
We won't belabor it again. Like,
I'm going to say that from every outgoing transfer from now on, so I can
that when we get it
back
right,
at it.
Like, we're official. We're like the prophets of Besiktas. No, all right. But let's move on because there's really not a lot to say about it.
Good luck to Matej Mitrovic.
Very good luck to the young guy. And you know what? Like, I think the odds are he's gonna do all right. But anyway, moving on. Before we go to the incoming stuff that I think fans are probably like sitting on the edge of their seats waiting to hear about, assuming anyone ever does that about what we have to say. First of all right, so the next 3 have not been concluded. A couple of them maybe don't even look very likely to be concluded. And we'll start with those. On our wings, there was a lot of flurry about potential sale of first Babel, Ryan Babel, and then Ricardo Quaresma,
and I'm gonna blame you if they both leave because that's because you just bought a Ryan Babel and a Ricardo Quaresma.
I was gonna say, like, what?
Jinx.
Oh my god! Like, that would have been like, so regarding Babel, the rumors have quelled. He was potentially gonna go to Flamengo. It had come down to them signing a contract, and I think supposedly his agent asked for €1 million more the last minute. I don't know how much truth there is to any of it. Ryan Babel seemed to be squashing those rumors as openly as he could from day one. I think he's getting a lot of slack from Beşiktaş fans even, who maybe just wanted to see him leave. And I think it's unjust, personally. He has not done anything wrong. He's said he wants to play for Beşiktaş. Whatever. Maybe his agent asked for more money in the last minute. Maybe not. It's neither here nor there. But the result is I don't think he's coming. I don't think he's leaving. But that said, if he does leave, I'm going to be so pissed because, Azkan, that I did just get a Ryan Babel jersey and the black one. Like, for me, the most attractive of the jerseys that we're wearing, the shirts we're wearing this season. So, Ryan Babel, if you're listening to this, give us another year.
Please don't go. Don't go.
There's just too much turnover, right? Like, we don't need to be replacing the whole squad right now. I think we've lost enough guys that we need to replace.
Yeah. With Babel, I wasn't against it because he was in the last year of his contract, and all that. And I think €7 million was a good fee. Decent fee, not really good, but again, kind of like on the low end of acceptable, like it is for Fabri.
He is coming off his best season in his career, right? Like, he's another textbook example of a guy who could theoretically be resuscitating himself through Beşiktaş. And I think, honestly, if I'm him, and I've said this before, another year like that, and he's probably getting, calls from some larger teams in Europe that he could then sort of seek to leave a lasting impression on. You've disagreed with me on that before.
Yeah, I think he's aging out of that caliber. I don't think that those kind of teams go for 32-year-old players, and they do, but not for Ryan Babel. They go for Cristiano Ronaldo, for Luka Modric, those types of players who are a little bit up there in age. I think that Babel is kind of aging out of qualifying for those clubs.
Well, yeah, and I don't mean the top, right? But I mean maybe like one of those sides like from Italy that squeaks into the Champions League in that like fourth slot or something like that. I don't know who that would be on any given year, but like maybe like an Udinese or something like that. Something like kind of under the radar team, but where he could be in a
Villarreal or
something. Exactly, like in Spain, that kind of a scenario where he could kind of leave an impression, one last hurrah on the big stage, in a big league in Europe. But again, that's just like my personal view of what he like. I don't even know where that comes from. And you've actually correctly mentioned he's a bit of an adventurer. He's been traveling around, and so
I actually thought Flamengo would have been a very logical step in his career. I could have seen that totally. That fits him. That fits Babel. But I do have to say that I thought he looked very sharp in the training camp, in the friendly matches. He had a somewhat longer training period, I think, but he looked sharp. Yeah. But the thing is, there was definitely an agreement there for €7 million. Why it didn't happen, it's perfectly possible that the entire thing was just a ruse by his agent to get more money out of Beşiktaş for a potential extension, and that they were kind of like, okay, Beşiktaş have accepted the $7 million. We're gonna push for $4 million a year. If there's, no offense, stupid enough to give us that, we'll go there. Otherwise, we're just gonna stay at Beşiktaş, and next year, maybe on a free transfer, we go back to Ajax or something.
Yeah, I mean, and the idea, if that were true, that he's trying to actually get an extension with Beşiktaş, I mean, that would be perhaps another element that could maybe relax our fans a little bit, right? It would suggest that maybe he even has an eye to stay around longer. I mean, he does seem to be enjoying himself. And I'd asked you to watch this video on YouTube yesterday, and I'm glad you did. And now it's a little bit superficial. Of course, it's like a promo video made by the player to essentially advertise himself. But Ryan Babel has this very interesting, well-produced series of his background scenes. And for the first time, I watched the one he released yesterday, and I really felt like it was informative in a way. So he covered the preseason, and he does all these little moments where he's kind of jokingly interacting with players, and throughout, they did Slovakia and Austria, and he left off where like they had just finished. They were getting ready for the season, after the last friendly match. But in the process of it, he manages to intone a sense that like the players are all conscious of the financial state of the club, right? Because in the beginning he's like, Kyle Larin, you're gonna have to step up this year because like we all know the situation with the club, But so that gave me an interesting thing, an interesting sentiment where like they know what's happening, they know the sort of restraints that they're under, and that guys could kind of disappear at any moment if the right offer comes, even, and that's like a kind of foreboding sense. But on the other side, you gain this sense that there's a sort of quiet confidence in a number of the players through how they're approaching that, their discussion with each other. I have to say, like, particularly in his interactions with Kyle Larin, and then also Tolgay Arslan, Ryan Babel shows an interesting kind of leadership that I never would have posited on him, given his like nomadic, traveling all over the world kind of past. But like particularly with Kyle Larin, he's like pushing him, saying, "You really need to step up this year. We're gonna need you." And like, don't tell me maybe you're ready to train. Tell me you're ready to train. Kind of corny stuff. But again, like that's what you want your older guys telling your younger guys.
I think he's a good big brother.
Yeah.
And I think he's had that role before when he went back for his second stint at Ajax. And from watching all his videos, I always get the impression that he's kind of that. I wouldn't say he's like the de facto leader in the dressing room.
No.
Definitely.
To a few guys.
But he's
to a few younger guys who he seems to have taken under his wing, maybe.
He's the big brother figure. He was that. He got along great with Cenk. You could tell that too. And he's building up that he had a great relationship with Aboubakar, and he's building up that relationship now with Larin. He's always, Aras Özbilis, of course, they have a history together, the youth of Ajax, stuff like that. And then, of course, with Tolgay, he seems to get along well. Adriano pops up a lot in his videos.
Yeah. Always smiling with his headphones on,
with his massive Brazilian smile. It's just fun to watch those videos. I don't think you can learn too much out of them, except for that the atmosphere in the team seems to be good, and that's very important. It's just a shame that
but also
Atiba isn't there.
Weighted, it's weighted by a sense, like I think they know what the club is. I was actually kind of glad to know that maybe the club had communicated with the players enough to let them know what's happening. That's actually kind of good. But then the Tolgay thing, did you notice the interaction with Tolgay, like where he was talking about his shoes and like he should change his shoes?
That he didn't score.
He was like, "You've only scored one goal in 2 years." Like he was so blunt, and I actually loved that because you and I have both spoken about Tolgay in exactly that same way. Like, kid, come on, like you've shown flashes.
I don't need him to score goals. I just need him to be present and not pick his games, not pick his moments, and not go to sleep in the middle of games. Because Tolgay has so much in him, so much quality. He's potentially a really, really good football player for Beşiktaş, but he just doesn't come out consistently, and he really doesn't have to be scoring goals for me for that. But he needs to.
It was just the tone,
focused.
I liked that Ryan Babel was very frankly like kind of saying like, get serious, like, get your shit together, kid. Like I'll have to beep that out. But anyway.
I think he has the right to say that as well because, people kind of complain about him sometimes, but over the last 18 months, he's been one of the most consistent performers on this team.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nobody who can.
And that's why fans lay off Ryan Babel. Like he may be a real asset beyond even the very high quality stuff he's doing on the pitch for us,
I don't know if so many fans are like on his. I guess, but the media plays a dirty role in that, they portray him in a certain way and people just buy all that horse shit. And, they don't realize that they're being turned against the players, by all these things that are being put out there, all this news, he wants more money, this and all that. He wants to leave and he's trying to get more out of this or that, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a layoff, guys. He's an asset. But let's move on. To the other side of the attack, Quaresma. Now, again, probably, this is much more in the air still because it's still sort of more fresh in the news cycle. But Quaresma was supposedly offered 8 million euro from an unknown Chinese side. One assumes it's probably a second division Chinese side because I think the transfer window is only open for the second division of China still. I think it already closed for the top division there. He's been offered 8 million over 3 years. 8 million per year for on a 3-year contract, which would be 24 million in total. So like no small fee to scoff at. But what are your thoughts, Khan? Are you skeptical like I am?
Yeah, I mean, 24 million over 3 seasons. That's a lot of money, and he's almost 35 years old, or 36, like Shinal Gunesh likes to say. He's not. That's a huge payday for the end of your career. It's the right time, age-wise, to go and cash in. Nobody would look at him, I think, with a disapproving look. I mean, when a young player like 26, 27 years old, when those guys go to China to cash in big, I think that deserves a certain amount of scrutiny. But sure. I think when you're 34, 35, 33, that's a different story. Mm-hmm. But I think we mentioned this like on one of our first episodes, like maybe the 4th or something. I think we mentioned that he said, I don't remember exactly which one of the big 3 sources in Portugal, La Bola or Jogo or Record. I don't remember which of them it was, but I do recall us talking about this and Quaresma basically saying something along the lines of, look, I've been there, I've done that, I've gone to the sandbox for money, I didn't like it. He only lasted less than 6 months in I guess Qatar or Dubai. I don't remember exactly where it was. He only lasted for 6 months there. It's not something that made him happy. Now, China is a little bit different, of course. You're not playing in front of 25 oil sheiks. You're playing in front of I assume, decent crowds with enthusiastic people, very, very nice stadiums and all that kind of stuff, with people that genuinely want to watch some football.
And there's no doubt the quality on the pitch has been improving. I just saw a list of some of the foreigners out there, and there's a lot of good, relatively decent age talent, right? But anyway, sorry, carry on.
No, but yeah, that's the thing. I mean, in that regard, I could kind of maybe see it. I think at the end of the day, it's just really a question of, is the money enough to lure him away? Is it enough money for him to say, look, I'm still enjoying my football in Europe, but this money is too good to refuse? Like Don Corleone would say, I make him an offer he can refuse. But, then the thing is, I mean, look, he's almost 35 years old. And the rational man would say, look, you're getting an 8 million euro offer for a near 35-year-old player. And a rational person would say, oh, yeah, that's a great offer. Take that money and run. However, I don't think you need to discard how influential Ricardo Quaresma has been the past 3 seasons for Besiktas. I don't think you can discard how important he is. And the main question is, yes, he's almost 35 years old, but can you, for 8 million euros, find a worthy replacement with the same quality as Quaresma?
No. And I want to put a disclaimer out there to a lot of Besiktas fans who are like, already putting Gökhan Töre in the starting lineup. Look, we all want him to blossom, and we all saw his potential, a few seasons ago. But we have to be rational here. Like the dude has not played football in 2.5 years. Like he looked sharp in the preseason, absolutely, and 5 games that were completely inconsequential. But you also don't want to put the burden of him having to play game in, game out, given we have to ease him back onto the pitch in terms of making sure his body is reacting the right way. He's gone through some serious injury. So before we rush to sort of sell off all of our wingers, we do have to consider that we would need replacements. We can't assume everything's going to go right with Gökhan Töre or even maybe Jermaine Lens, right?
Yeah. Plus the thing, the big thing that I have with Gökhan Töre as opposed to Quaresma. You know, in his first stint with Beşiktaş, Quaresma wasn't always the most reliable guy. But in this second stint, I think he has been one of the most reliable guys. Yes, he's had those games where he let the team down, where he took a red card, where he took a yellow card he shouldn't have gotten and therefore missed the next match. He's let the team down in those ways. But I don't think you can fault Quaresma for having games where he didn't give 100%. I think Quaresma gives 100% every single match. I think it was different in the past. Yeah. He's just so passionate about playing football. That's what he likes to do. And I think he realized that after the whole situation the first time around and going to, I guess, Dubai or Qatar. I honestly don't remember. And then having that second chance at Porto, now having that second chance at Beşiktaş, I think he's come to realize that he just loves to play football. He wants to do it in an environment where he feels appreciated, where he feels at home. And that's something I feel, you know, I mean, like I just said, that this is Quaresma's second chance and he took it. Gökhan Töre also deserves a second chance. But during his first chance, his first 2 seasons, he always gave 100%. Well, actually, no, he didn't always give 100%. He was great his first 2 seasons, but he didn't always give 100%. And then that third season,
of seasons, right? He would always sort of like, he'd always come out hot and then kind of like tail off.
Well, I don't know. He just kind of felt sometimes like he wasn't interested.
Yeah.
And he didn't really care about certain matches. And then that's what Quaresma had in his first stint too. I think Quaresma didn't feel it when he was traveling away to, let's say, Adana or something. I didn't play it against Adana in his first stint, but it's just an example.
Right.
Now, I think Töre had that at the times as well. Now, of course, he deserves a second chance, but with Gökhan Töre, I think we've seen some negative things about him. I think, you know, the way he kind of forced his move and all that kind of stuff, and he did show that he wasn't the most reliable guy at the end of the day. And I think Quaresma has shown the opposite to Şenol Güneş. And it's all about this. It's all about Şenol Güneş's stint right now. He's been at the club for long enough, and we have to look at it from that perspective. Töre under Güneş hasn't been the most reliable player, so it's not someone I just want to build on blindly. As for Quaresma, he has been reliable. And Jermaine Lens, you know, jury's still out on him. I kind of liked his performance in the preseason game so far.
Very
but
sharp,
he still needs to do it when it matters, of course.
Just to interject, so that the podcast can never be faulted for its lack of accuracy, Quaresma did play for Shabab Al-Ahli Dubai FC. So you were absolutely you narrowed it down, but you know.
I'm not going to forget that. I was doubting whether it was Al Ain where Ryan Babel played, and you know, I always, you know, Qatar, Dubai. It's kind of like difficult to remember.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
But
I pulled it up on my phone while you were talking.
That's good.
But you know, I wanted us to have the. But yeah, all right.
We don't have to rectify it.
We've covered it, right? That's about what needs to be said about Quaresma. Like, neither one of us, it sounds like, and I'll go on the record now as saying the same. Neither one of us is keen on the kind of the idea of him leaving right now.
Timing is off.
Yeah.
You know, we're having too many people. We're already selling too many players right now. I think that's just too much. You know, if Fabri wasn't going, if Talisca was still here, if
Vida.
You know, if Vida maybe
and
didn't play that amazing
right.
World Cup I was saying, all that. You know, I mean, if we weren't changing half of the starting lineup, then I'd say, you know what, okay, 8 million for a near 35-year-old, that's good money. Take it, you know. And obviously, you know, Beşiktaş have accepted the bid, but it's all up to Quaresma now. Beşiktaş aren't going to tell him, look, you have to take this because we need this money. It's really a case of, look, we are willing to accept this. You have a good offer on the table. If you want to take it, take it. If you don't, you still have a contract for 2 more years, and you know, you've been important for us, and you can stick around. I mean, I do feel kind of confident in saying, because I said the exact same thing last year. Of course, we didn't do the podcast then, but I
said the exact same thing last year
too. I said the exact same thing last year. Look, if they're willing to bid this type of money now, why they will still bid it next year, and I'm confident that next year there's still going to be a 7 or an 8 million euro. You know, 8 million euros isn't for a player like Ricardo Quaresma, despite his age, that is not an astronomical bid.
Not from China.
If it was,
not from China.
If it was 15 million euros, different story. But 8 million euros.
Or if it was like Porto, right? If it's Porto offering 8 million, in that case, it's like that's the club of his youth, right? Then at some point you might feel kind of compelled, but.
Well, Sporting is the club of his youth.
Oh, right, but didn't he say something about wanting to go back to Porto? Yeah, whatever it may be.
No, but what he said in the past is that Porto is his home, and Beşiktaş is also his home, away from home. He was, of course, he went through the youth academy at Sporting, but Porto is where he had his big days and his best period in Portugal, and Beşiktaş is, of course, abroad the team he had most success with.
Yeah, and with 2 years left on his contract. Let's think about that next year, But anyway, let's move on because we don't want to get rooted into anything here. We've covered the majority of the outgoing stuff, with the exception of the one outgoing transfer that I'm fairly positive you and I would be most excited about in this whole window, and that is Alvaro Negredo is currently in talks with a Saudi Arabian side, Al-Hilal, and Beşiktaş have given them permission to talk to the player. But the transfer fee has not yet been discussed. I've seen sort of nonsensical, photo match type stuff maybe, but that the side that Xavi plays for.
Yeah.
Al-Sadd?
Qatar, I guess. Al-Sadd.
They're
Qatar.
like, because of Al-Hilal's interest, that they've kind of like, oh, maybe we want to get in that. And of course, the Spain connection could play a role there.
Yeah.
And I've even seen stuff like 6 million, 7 million, but I don't want to even I'm shy to even say it because we don't know the sources.
So the source on that was SportX, which is a fairly popular website, and also a Twitter account, of course. And I checked that. I asked one of my connections in Saudi Arabia. I said, look, because the Al-Hilal interest is confirmed. They are negotiating with Negredo. That is a fact. That is not a rumor. Nice. That is actually something that's happening.
I'll flash the news song there.
So there was absolutely no mention yet in the Turkish media regarding a fee or anything like that, because there simply isn't anything to report yet. I checked that with Wael Jabir from Saudi Arabia, and he told me Beşiktaş have he has we'll add it maybe in the description. But basically, he said to me, Beşiktaş have given Al-Hilal permission to talk to Negredo. They're talking to Negredo right now. Just no agreement as of yet. However, there might be or there might not be. They're looking at the striker. They were also looking at Islam Slimani. They were also looking at Bas Dost before, but both of those didn't work out. So now they're looking at Negredo. They're currently on training camp in Austria, and they want to finalize a deal quickly. They want him to join their Austria camp still, so they're trying to make this go quickly. They're not trying to, let this draw too long. So that's positive, I guess. But there's no talk yet about money. So basically, the gist here is Beşiktaş have given them permission to talk to Negredo. Can they agree a deal with Negredo? Then Beşiktaş and Al-Hilal will talk about money. So there's absolutely been no talk yet between the clubs about money. Now, the rumor from SportX was that Al-Hilal supposedly bid 7 million euros, and Al-Sadd are now coming in willing to bid 7 or 8 million. And I checked that with him as well, and he said, look, that's probably not true, because they have a striker. His name is Baghdad Wait, I'm reading it right now. Baghdad Buneja. He's a top scorer in the African Champions League right now and stuff like that. Okay. So unless he's leaving, they're not going to go for a new player, because there's a foreign limit, I believe, as well there. So they are only allowed to have, I think, 4 foreigners or something. So that's definitely fake news. Maybe you should insert Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, I don't even
going fake news.
I don't even know. I can't even. I don't want to have to watch the highlights in order to find the clip. But yes, fair enough. No politics. We'll keep it clean. let's cross our fingers, right? Let's cross our fingers. Yeah. Look, there was a lot of buzz because he came into this last match against Krasnodar and like immediately scored a goal, well assisted by Goran Gonu, I'll mention also. But and people are like, oh, look at that, an immediate impact. He wants to show the coach something, blah, blah, blah. Okay, look, like no one has ever said that you and I have gone on the record saying that in a specific role, at a certain time, this could have gone completely differently. Everything could have been fine.
If he was getting paid 2 million euros a year,
right,
less,
and that's the contract.
People would look completely different at Alvaro Negredo because we've been critical of him, but let the record show he is not a bad player. He is a very good football player, but he's just not living up to that contract. We cannot afford to pay a player 4.3 million euros and not have him absolutely wreck shit up.
Absolutely. And it's a shame, like in the preseason, Şenol Güneş showed some proclivity towards playing with two strikers up front. And it would be a shame if we sold him before doing that. Not because I think we have to sell him no matter what at this point. But that is the role he may have actually thrived in last season if Şenol Güneş had shaken it up then, perhaps. But I guess it's hard to shake it up like that in the middle of the season, right?
Yeah, this is a thing because if, like I said, if he was earning 2 million euros less, I think we'd all be saying, look, sell Love, maybe even loan out Larin and just keep Negredo as the second striker. But you cannot afford to pay your second striker that type of money, given the financial situation the club is in. So it's just a case of you have to get rid of him. He didn't. If he had scored 25 goals last year, it's a different story.
No, and I meant second striker, on the pitch, right? Like more.
No. I understand what you meant.
But certainly, like in the pecking order, you're absolutely right. You can't pay 4 million euro for a second string.
Yeah, he's not a bad player at all. He's a quality player, in fact, but just not quality enough to warrant that type of a wage. And given our financial situation, given the fact that we need to get a striker that can score more goals, and the fact that we are at a point where Kyle Larin has shown promise, but at the same time we cannot afford to put all our eggs in that basket.
Absolutely. And we have to just be cognizant as well. Here on the podcast, we try to often give the perspective of the front office and try to, put in context all the finances. But, so as such, you have to remember, if one guy on the club is earning 4 million euros, that whatever it is that Negredo is earning, it sets a precedent as well. When guys like Atiba, for example, are trying to re-sign, and the club wants to offer them less because they're trying to say we're trying to cut costs. Then you look over and you point over at a guy like Negredo and say, like, dude, that guy's earning 4 million euro. How are you going to tell me you can't give me, a slight bump in mine? So in general, like as a precedent, it's probably best to clear the books of those types of examples.
Yeah, that was one of the rumors regarding Ryan Babel where. He's on 2.1 or 2.3. I'm not 100% sure on that. One of the two right now, a year. And supposedly he wanted 3 million to resign because look, Negredo's making 4 point whatever, and my performance, my contribution to the team is bigger, isn't it? So I deserve a bump. And realistically, I think, for playing where he plays, he's not playing in Qatar, he's not playing in China. I think 2+ million euros a year for a player like Ryan Babel, who's been amazing for us. I think that's a little steep. I think that's fair.
Maybe even a little steep. You're absolutely right.
Maybe even a little steep. Yeah, I mean, that's all relative, of course.
And you're not going to get him to agree to less. But I think if we can maybe get it to like 2.5 or whatever.
And that's also kind of why I was kind of like 7 million for Babel now it's good because he's getting to a point age-wise, 32 years old. Do you really want to re-sign him on a 3-year deal? I mean, he's going to be 35 by the end that deal's over. Yeah, you might sell him.
I'd say maybe a 2
next year
plus an option, something like that.
Yeah, that's often the thing with these players. They want longer guaranteed contracts because that's also part of the value for them. And they're right, of course.
Well, all right, so let's move on. So, like, that's about it for outgoing transfers. Of course, we'll keep you all abreast of what's to come, and of course, my fear and I think subconsciously a part of what delayed this podcast was this constant fear that we're gonna do the podcast, and by the time we get it out, like post production and all, some huge or it feels like the bubble's about to burst. So of course that's a concern. But again, that's all we've got for now as far as outgoing transfers. And so we'll shift to incoming. And the truth is, and this is like the cloud sort of hanging over the fan base, I think, at the moment, there's not a lot of news. But we're going to talk about the news that there is, that does exist out there, and which I'm going to go on the record. I don't even have to ask Khan. He and I are both really in on this one. We would. This is so. We'll just cut right to it. Shinji Kagawa. Khan, what do you say? Yes, please.
Man, that is like my ultimate wet dream. Like within the realm of possibility of a guy we could get for that position. And I don't remember if I said it on Twitter, but I remember saying it after the Belgium game. I'm like, oh, Shinji Kagawa, come to Besiktas, man. Seriously, he's such a and he's so perfect, perfect for the football that Şenol Güneş wants to go back to. Because if you remember, the football we were playing the first season with Şenol Güneş, our fans, kind of refer to it as tiki-taka because it kind of was tiki-taka. It wasn't Barcelona level tiki-taka, but it was our own version of tiki-taka with Sosa, with Ozan, and with Atiba in midfield, and mainly, Sosa, Ozan being that tandem there. And I think, Shinji Kagawa, he's like 10 times
it's so
Sosa
funny.
Even, in terms of that, that his work rate.
Yeah. No, I just want to interject that was. I literally just said that exact. I have Japanese guests staying at my house, and I was introducing to them. I was like, "Oh my God, guys! I was staying up so late because there's all this news about Shinji Kagawa," and I was like, "He would be a perfect fit because," and it was like, XYZ, exactly what you said, down to the tiki-taka stuff.
And add to that the opportunity it offers for expanding into the Japanese market, something Fikret Orman is so huge on, the global expansion of Besiktas, that, getting Shinji Kagawa, there's nothing bigger, you could maybe argue Honda, but that's not bigger anymore, Shinji Kagawa is currently the number one Japanese star. While you're at it, sign Shinji Kagawa and then sign Nakajima as well, and you have the current number one and you have the future number one.
I love it. I'm a big fan of like Japanese football in general and their kind of ethos, their sort of team-oriented mentality. I think I love it. I love it all.
And the over my dead body mentality, the work rate, the ultimate professionalism, and it's just I think it will be absolutely amazing. And the thing is, I don't want to get my hopes up, but they're already really high up. And the negative thing is that so thus far, honestly, there's been nothing like insider wise that's been pointing towards Kagawa, though thus far it's really only been media reports, which, but the thing is, the Come to Besiktas campaign has already started. His Instagram is getting flooded with over 100,000 Come to Besiktas messages already, and some players get annoyed by their accounts getting spammed. I think that a guy like Kagawa, who recently said in actually yesterday, I believe it was, because I published this on the website as well. He's currently yesterday at least, he was currently in Osaka, training in Osaka, and he was also there in regards to the West Japan relief program. I guess, is it West Japan or is it North Japan where the disaster happened? The floods.
It was Northwest, but yeah, so you're both either way.
So basically, he was there for that still, but he was asked about his future, whether he's moving or is staying with Dortmund, and he said, "Look, right now I'm here doing this. We'll see what happens when I go back to Dortmund, but I'm I'm in need of a new challenge, and he kind of said something along the lines, I want to be part of a new project that challenges me, basically. The exact quotes are up on the website, and please do check those out if you want.
Yeah, no.
But he didn't, of course, he wasn't asked about Beşiktaş or anything. You know, at that point when that interview took place, I don't think the news about Beşiktaş had picked up just yet in Japan. But it's clear that Kagawa is open to a new adventure. I think that the project Beşiktaş have kind of would be building around him and building around Ozan.
Oh, what a pair!
I think it's something that could definitely. I think it would be. I think it could be a match made in heaven, and I think that could definitely be something that could entice him. Add to that to the love that he's being shown by our fans. I just have a feeling that if the club would go this route and actually make a serious move for him, I think he'd be willing to go for it. And that's just my gut feeling. It's not anything insider information. I
want to piggyback on that. I'm not going to call myself a Japanese expert by any stretch. I lived in Japan for a little over a year at one point. I've studied the language in high school, actually, which is ironic because I don't speak Turkish. But I've followed Japanese football from afar for a long time as such, and I've kind of I've enjoyed their national team in a number of World Cups. For starters, you have guys like Honda who have already gone out to like Mexico, right? He's playing in Mexico at the moment.
Yeah.
There is a kind of adventurousness to Japanese people in general as far as like traveling, and I think they don't see European football in the same way that certainly Europeans do, but even like most people here in the United States, you know, it's still the height of the game, and it's still, you know, when they're testing themselves out, that's where they want to do it. But they also very highly value sort of South American style of play, and all of that, saying that the adventurousness lends itself to something Kagawa could probably, you know, consider. But then furthermore, recently Takashi Inui signed with, I think it was Real Betis. He spoke directly to how the outreach of fans contributed a huge amount to him signing with Real Betis, and he said that he felt so wanted, and that like he felt like stepping onto the pitch would be so exciting because of how much interest in him they'd shown already. And this was something that Kagawa had retweeted, and then, you know, he took a photo next to Inui or something like that. But anyway, so it strikes me.
A player I absolutely loved at the World Cup, by the way, Inui. But I'm definitely not the only one, because he had an amazing World Cup.
So, you know, all of these things, you know, they're all nothing concrete. There's nothing like, this is why, there's definitely no way he says no to it. You know, no, there's nothing like that. But there's certainly a lot of signs that point to this being, you know, kind of an interesting thing. Not to mention his longtime teammate and I think good friend was Nuri Sahin with Dortmund. And so I could imagine him saying, "Hey, Nuri, you know, what do you think about the idea of me going to play in Turkey? You know, I'm hearing all this come to Beşiktaş stuff." And I would imagine Nuri, who's also, I believe, rumored to be linked to Galatasaray maybe or something like. I think he's been linked to coming back to Turkey for a long time, and I think he'd probably coming to Turkey. I guess, right? But I mean, I guess with the national team, he's been there before, right? If we're gonna,
that's true.
If we're being technical, but yeah, exactly. You know, but I think he'd be like, "Hey, by the way, you know, I'm actually considering going back to Turkey myself." You know, so all of these little tiny arrows are pointing to something potentially positive. And like you said, there's no concrete link there, but that would be, my gosh, like.
It's totally wishful thinking.
I can't. Yeah. For me, the ideal window, and this is a good segue maybe into our next, like, possible upcoming or incoming thing. But the ideal transfer window for me at this point would be to not be changing so much more in other areas. I think we probably are going to need another central defender, but I'm not even prepared to consider who or what. But I definitely would love to see Shinji Kagawa maybe brought in on one of those like 2 million something plus whatever, like on a loan and a fee, and then an Aboubakar. And Aboubakar with the Vida money, we could. I think we've said Porto is probably looking for us to buy him outright, or whatever. Maybe we could put the majority of our transfer window money into Aboubakar, and then work out one of those loan deals for Shinji Kagawa. And that for me is like, I think most of the people who are hating and naysaying and like, oh, we got to get rid of Fikret Orman already, like Şenol Güneş out, whatever, that would shut them all up right quick.
That's the thing, though. I mean, on one end, it's positive that the board aren't allowing themselves to be pressured into making a quick transfer just to shut people up. But on the other end, if you bring in a Shinji Kagawa now, that would completely take off all the pressure. And I'm confident in that would at least shut the fans up for another 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe I'm being a little bit wishful thinking there as well, because how quickly the excitement of the old and in with the new, and but I think for us too, I think Kagawa is absolutely the perfect signing for this window. I think also you have to keep in mind he's not even 30 yet. He's 29 years old. He still got years in the tank. He would just be such a perfect signing. The question is, I don't know what he's making at Dortmund, but knowing Dortmund, they're not a club to pay extravagant amounts of money. So I think that in terms of salary, he should be doable for us. It could be an exceptional salary still for us, like a 3.5 million thing or something. I don't know. Transfer fee wise, that's the big question. What do Dortmund still want for him? I've read 13 million euros, but I don't know how reliable that is at all. But even, I think that's not too bad if you can pay off 3 now, pay 10 next year. It's possible. And like you said, with that, maybe with that Vida money, I don't think we're going to be buying anyone outright for more than 6 or 7, to be fair. I can't see us splash 20 million on Aboubakar. That's just not in the DNA of this.
It would be in my as far as I see it, and this is probably a good segue into the Aboubakar discussion, but I think that would be a last ditch. Like, oh my God, the season's starting in a couple days and we don't have a striker yet. So what do you want? Just instead of making the mistake of like a Negredo or Love, they I think they'd probably want to sort of break that cycle. Right?
I think they have to.
But so that that's the kind of scenario I envision that happening in. But you're absolutely right. Like they'd want to have something wrapped up before then, I think, anyhow. And so yeah, what do you know? What do you know, Khan? What do you know about Vincent Aboubakar?
Really, I don't know anything. I can just tell you what I've heard. For example, Firat Güneyer was talking about this, that the sentiment within the club is kind of, look, they haven't given up on Aboubakar yet. Yes, Porto rejected their loan offer, but the feeling within the club is kind of like, if he's still with Porto on the 20th of August, then in the last 10 days of the transfer window, the chances of Beşiktaş still being able to sign him drastically increases. He also suggested that Aboubakar was rejecting other offers because he wants to go back to Beşiktaş, and he's kind of putting pressure on Porto to let him go, stuff like that. Then I went and spoke to the other end of the spectrum, to the Porto side. I went to speak to one of my connections there, and he basically I told him, look, the perception here and the feeling kind of seems that Porto is kind of desperate for money. And he told me, yeah, look, Porto aren't in a good way right now, but it's not like they're desperate. They just made 50 million already this window, and the thing is, if what he also said is Sergio Conceição is already pissed off if they let Aboubakar go for anything less than a great fee. Whoa. He might just quit. That's what he literally said. So we kind of talked about the possibilities that maybe the whole, they want 20 million for him, we know that. And then I said, look, maybe with a decent fee up front, obligatory option to buy. He said, yeah, maybe if it's obligatory I could see it, but otherwise definitely not. and even with the obligation to buy, he's kind of hesitant about that, and that's just the perspective from that end, so it's just, I don't know, man. I don't think that it's dangerous if the club are thinking this way of, look, we'll get Aboubakar in those last 10 days, because if that is the mindset you have, and then it doesn't end up working, or Porto just says, look, if you're not going to be paying us our 20 million, we're just going to keep him. We can use him to win the league again. We can use him in the Champions League. We'll just sell him in January, or we'll just sell him in the summer or something. That can always happen. So I hope that Besiktas aren't putting their money on Porto kind of chickening out, playing chicken with Porto, and kind of just, like one of those driving things where you're like driving towards each other and who flinches first. I hope that's not what they're planning there, because I do think a good striker transfer is important. I think if they insist on it being Aboubakar, then they need to make a serious offer for him. And like you said, if the Domagoj Vida money is available, if they sell Vida for a good price, maybe make an effort and invest that in Aboubakar. But I even said it the first time around. I thought that us paying 10 million for him was a risk, and I stand by that, despite the fact that he had a great first half of the season with Porto, and despite the fact that he did really well with us, and now his market value has drastically increased. I think that doubling that now, it's still going to be a risk, just because of the type of player Aboubakar is, because he is so unpredictable. And it's funny, because we just spoke about this with one of the guys in our group, Emra, and Aboubakar is an unpredictable player. He can be so brilliant, but he can completely let you down. We saw it against Olympiacos. We saw it against Dynamo Kiev, where he just gets a stupid red card. And that happened a couple of times with him already. He's very, very fickle. He's very dependent on confidence. Remember in the beginning when he came to us, he was very unconfident, and he couldn't score for the life. If anyone held a gun to his head and stuff like that. He's a great player when he's on form, and I don't know. 20 million is so much money for a club like Besiktas. It's difficult, always, but definitely right now. Yeah, it's a difficult matter.
And that's, I think, a perfect way to sum up this transfer window. A difficult matter. And I mean,
yeah. But if you do have 50 million coming in, you have to at least spend like 20 of that, right? I mean, there has to be some.
Especially if we still have huge
and that's the thing,
like the team, right?
Yeah. And I think you can, we've proven it time and time again that for relatively little money, you can put together a really good team. But I think if you're selling, because if we do end up selling Vida for like 25 million, this will be a 50 million window of incoming. That's an all-time Turkish record, mind you. All-time Turkish record. And if you have a window like that, I don't think you can, given the fact that you sold or lost 5 starters, I just don't think you can say with a straight face to your fan base, oh, we're going to pump 6 or 7 million in it. No, I think you have to at least pump 20 million in there. And it doesn't all have to be, don't spend it all in one place. I'm not saying that, but, get a good number 10, get a good striker, and then maybe get a good replacement for Vida. And I think if you fill in those 3 positions plus a good goalkeeper, that's 4 positions. And I think the most important one is, of course, a goalkeeper and the 10, and then the striker. And then, I think the central defender role is less important, because we have seen how good Gary Medel can be in that role. And I do think that Şenol Güneş is maybe leaning towards a tall guy Oğuzhan midfield and not playing with a pure defensive midfielder. And then, of course, there's always the right back position, which we've completely forgotten about, but we still need something there as well, because Gökhan Gönül, I'm not one of those people that is going to say he's useless now, but he is. It's time to.
Yeah, I mean, I heard grumbling, because he played. Dorukhan Tokuz played at right back in a couple of our friendlies, I think, And people seem satisfied with the
Yeah, but
concept
that's
of
not
him being a
a
backup. But we need a long-term plan. I
yeah,
think.
but you have a couple of friendly matches, and
Exactly.
maybe he
Yeah.
did well there. But you never as soon as the real if you're playing for the marbles, as we say in Belgium, for the knickers. As soon as you're playing for the important stuff, and he does well defensively, but he can't cross, then you have he doesn't contribute anything in attack
exactly.
or whatever. I wouldn't bank on Dorkan, and I'm not sure. Maybe he is a really good right back. You never know, but I'm not gonna bank on that for sure. I think they need to look towards the future and get someone good for that position as well.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good note to wrap things up on, because we're out of time. Look, guys, let's hope for the best. These are interesting times. Not necessarily dark, though. Let's not throw the season away before it starts on some sort of despair that's not merited. At the end of the day, we do have some talented guys on the squad already, and that was something I enjoyed about Ryan Babel's video. They seem to have this underlying confidence in themselves. They know what they're up against, but they also know who they are, and they know what they're capable of. We haven't lost much at all from the season ago, where we had just repeated as champion. So, guys, listeners, Beşiktaş fans, big picture here. It's not all dark. Let's just wait for the transfer window to be closed before we judge the whole thing, and let's hope for the best, right?
Yeah. Indeed. And I just want to say, of course, on Thursday, we have our first official match of the season against B36 Tórshavn. This match will be played on the Faroe Islands in Tórshavn, of course. And hopefully tomorrow I'll be sitting down with a Faroe sports journalist. And I had to look quite hard to find him. But yeah, basically, his name is. Let me just check that because I have it open here. Very cool name, actually. Trondur Arge. What an amazing name that is. So I'll be sitting down with Trondur tomorrow, hopefully to talk a little bit about and previewing Beşiktaş's opponent, B36 Tórshavn. And Sinan, I believe you're going to be sitting down with someone soon too. Literally.
Yeah. So we have Barış İzgordu. Is my pronunciation fitting there?
Yeah, that was good. It was better than your pronunciation of Gökhan Töre on the previous episode.
Oh my God, I was really struggling with that. I heard myself too.
Yeah, I chuckled at that one.
You heard me correct myself a couple times. Yeah, that was a struggle. But yeah, Barış is going to come in. We're going to talk about shirts. Our shirts, as we mentioned earlier, are on the way. I've got my Babel and Quaresma shirts. We'll see if they're on the squad. And so we're going to talk about this year's shirts. Tell us a little bit about his background with the club, because this is actually fairly fascinating, and I think you know more than I.
Barış İzgordu is how should I put it? The author of the Beşiktaş shirts book that was sold by Kartal Yuvasi for the past couple of years. That's a project he started a couple of years ago during the Feta season. He basically made a book which depicted the history of Beşiktaş shirt culture, basically, in which he showed off his collection, I believe, and of course, just the history of Beşiktaş shirts throughout the years, and that's something he did alongside with a friend of his, Erkan, and they did that for the club. They made those books, and they basically gifted that to the club so the club could sell it to make money during the Feta season. That was a very noble thing of him to do, I'd gesture. Say. And of course, Barış is a huge Beşiktaş shirt collector, as am I, by the way. I'm a pretty big collector myself,
avid collector.
But So really, Barış lives in New York City, and I believe you two are going to meet up.
That's right. I have to give him his shirts. His shirts are coming in the mail.
We, of course, in order to discuss these new shirts and reviewing them, basically, you kind of have them in hand. So we kind of wanted to do this when the shirts came out, but we decided, look, we're going to wait and we're going to see. We're going to get these guys these shirts in hand so they can really judge them, because, it's not just the aesthetic that's important. It's also the quality of the materials that are being used. And there's something that I particularly am excited about a change in the shirts, and I'm sure you guys will talk about it. Due to the time difference, it's very unlikely that I'll be able to join you guys. I kind of would love to, because this is really something that...
this is your bread and butter.
Very passionate about it, and I really want to hear
if anything, you'll have to give me some questions. You'll have to give me some pre-planned questions.
I definitely will, but that's definitely something fun, I think, to look forward to, because our fans are always they have their opinions about the shirts every year, and usually it's about the design choices. But I think that it's going to be I hope it's going to be a very fun conversation between the two of you, a little bit of history on shirts,
sure.
Which shirts maybe it reminds him of, and stuff like that. Just a hopefully a fun converation.
And
about
I'm sure
that.
I'll get some thoughts of his on the current state of the team and everything as well. But so that's it, guys. Look forward to some great interviews in that regard. You're going to keep you guys informed on all fronts, and of course, keep your ears to the ground on all kind of transfer news. We're going to be reporting it all as always. Why don't you send us out, Khan? And mention a follow that could be of interest to our fans is Khan's Saudi contact. If you guys want to be staying abreast on all things Al-Hilal to see if they're going after Negredo, why don't you mention him when you give out the Twitter handles?
Okay, sure.
Send us out.
Okay, guys. So, thank you all for listening, of course, again for this 11th episode. And, of course, please do give us a follow on Twitter at Besiktas_int, and follow the podcast account, which still has a low amount of followers. Come on, people, give us a follow there at at Eagles_podcast. Give our friend Sinan a follow at Sir_writes_a lot. Myself at Brazilian double set, of course, and my friend as well, for covering, if you're ever interested in Saudi football or something, they have a very interesting account as well, that is at AHDAAFME. So again, AHDAAFME. That's an account you can follow if you're interested in anything Saudi football related. So for me, Kaan Bayezid, thank you very much for listening once again, and Sinan, hit us home.
How could I not? Go Besiktas, everyone. See you all soon.